Okay, in this video we are going to go ahead and set up Thymeleaf. So on the book controller, remember we're returning back a string called books. So what that's going to do is tell Spring Boot to look for a view called books. And I've actually added in an HTML document. So what you want is under resources, templates. This is the default location that Spring Boot is going to be looking for templates. And right now this is an HTML document. What I'm going to do is convert this to a Thymeleaf template in this lesson. But that's one of the nice things about Thymeleaf that I really like is it works. It's a natural template language, meaning that it's going to work from HTML. You're working with an HTML document. If you've ever worked with JSP is more of an XML document with a lot of littering of tags and whatnot, and it doesn't render in a browser. Here, this does render in a browser properly, where other template engines will not. That's why it's considered a natural template language. We're not going to go too deep into Thymeleaf at this point in time, but we do need to add it into the project. We don't have the Thymeleaf dependency. So the first thing that we need to do to get this cooking as Thymeleaf is come over here to the POM, and I need to add in the Thymeleaf dependency. And of course, Spring is going to provide us a starter for that. So we're going to say Spring, and we want Thymeleaf, and that's going to bring in the organization org.spring framework boot. And this adds that in. I'm going to come over to the Maven dialog and do a refresh. You can set that up to auto refresh where it will automatically download the dependencies. We can see that we get the sync properly, minimize that. And this should go from red to, I guess that's a slightly off-white color to me. If it does not, sometimes IntelliJ doesn't update its dependencies properly. A quick way, so if you're having problems with it recognizing it, you've done the refresh and it's still not doing it, come up to File, Invalidate Caches, and go ahead and tell it to invalidate and restart. That'll force IntelliJ to re-index the project. Usually doesn't happen, but sometimes it does. And that's just a quick tip as to get around that. Now what we need to do is update that. So I'm going to come back over to the books. And first thing we need to do is add in the Thymeleaf namespace. So under the HTML tag, I'm going to do XML-NS. And we want to set up the tag TH. It looks like the IntelliSense wasn't picking that up. I'm going to double check, make sure that we did in fact bring that down. That might be grayed out because I'm not using it yet. So now what we want to do is start doing some Thymeleaf tags. And the first one is what we want to do is get an iterator. So remember, on the book controller, we're taking the model. The model is going to be available to Thymeleaf, and we're setting an attribute of books, and this here, the find all, that's returning back an iterable of books. Doesn't matter the implementation, but it is an iterable, so we're expecting it to be able to iterate that. So what we're saying is that we're going to have multiple books coming back. So what we want to do here is on this setting up the table, and we are setting up a table row. We're going to say th each equals. Here we are going to do short snippet. So the $ bracket, that is a way for us to access the model. So now what we're saying is effectively for each. So we are telling that with the $ bracket, that is telling Thymeleaf to look at the model for a property called book. So we're saying for each book and books, we want to do the following. And here on this table row, I want to say th, we're going to replace the text. So we're telling it to replace it with the value of, say, $. So this is the way we access that. So we're going to say for each book, get the ID. And we want to do the same thing here. Again, I'm telling it to replace that. So when Thymeleaf reads this, it's going to be iterating through this. So for each book, it's going to be going to that book, getting the ID. So yeah, let's see, double check book. We have an ID property has been, and actually for this, we can say publisher. We can navigate this. So publisher, and Let's see, that property was publisher name. So we're using the dot notation to navigate the object structure. And I think this is, I'm just double checking my work. I think this is good. So now, let's minimize some of this stuff. I'm going to go ahead and start the application, make sure that initializes properly. We can see that this did come up. We are initializing the data. So now let's come over to Chrome. So remember, we're going to be running 8080. We're looking at the H2 console, but here, remember, we mapped the property of books in the controller. And now we can see we are generating a book list, and we have 2 books in there, ID2, domain-driven design, and then ID4 of J2EE development without EJB. So what's happening here, let's come back over to IntelliJ. When that request is coming through, just to recap, the browser is going to be doing an HTTP GET against port 8080. That is going to, we're doing a GET operation against books. So right now this request mapping says I'm going to handle that books. We are going to the book service. So if we come into the book service, see we have that one implementation. If we follow that, that is going to be calling the book repository. The book repository that is provided by Spring Data JPA. That is going to be working in conjunction with Hibernate to go through the database and get a list of all books in the database, return that value. So this is going to return back an iterable of books through the book service. The book controller is appending that to the model. So Spring Framework is going to be passing that model into GetBooks. The find all operation provides an iterable of books against that. And then with Thymeleaf, what happens there is when Thymeleaf processes this template using the template language, here on line 16, we're setting up an iterator saying for each book in the property of books on the model, go through and replace the text, the 1, 2, 3 text, with the property of ID, the spring in action with the property of title, and the property of WROX, rocks, from book publisher name. So here we are navigating an object graph from book to publisher name. And this is going to occur for each book. And I toggle back over to Chrome, even though we have a very, very simple HTML document here. This is just the default styling. We haven't done anything like that. Not the prettiest thing, I admit, but it does functionally provide what we want as far as displaying a brief table of books. So at this point, we've built a Spring Boot web application that is working with a database. We are initializing data in the database. And when we request /books from the browser, we are making a complete round trip to the database, getting data from the database, and then generating it into an HTML document that the browser can understand.